Are we fully leveraging the diverse potential of multi-generational teams in the tech industry? Well, today here on Tech Talks Daily, I'm excited to welcome Michael Reidy onto the podcast. He's a seasoned consultant with Interaction Associates, and he spent over 25 years guiding tech companies through the dynamics of a multi-generational workforce. And his expertise shines in fostering innovation and collaboration across so many different age groups. In fact, there are currently 5 generations in the workplace. So this makes it essential for thriving in this rapidly evolving tech landscape. So today we'll explore how constant change is the hallmark of the tech industry, why embracing this is crucial for innovation, and we'll also discuss the significant role that leaders play in shaping the culture that bridges generational divides, builds trust and nurtures relationships. And he'll also share insights on how adopting interest-based conversations over position-based ones can turn generational differences from challenges into opportunities. And also highlighting examples like the reconciliation efforts in Northern Ireland. He's going to illustrate so much about how finding common grounds can pave the way for substantial outcomes. Now, before I get today's guest on, a quick shout out to the sponsors of Tech Talks Daily, because in today's remote-first world, I think settling for outdated managed file transfer solutions means ultimately you're risking your sensitive data. But if you upgrade to Kiteworks, the gold standard in secure MFT, boasting FedRAMP moderate authorization, Kiteworks isn't just secure, it's a complete transformation of how your business handles file transfers and communications. So say goodbye to compromise and hello to unmatched security and efficiency. And you can do that by making the switch to kiteworks.com. Visit kiteworks.com to begin. That's kiteworks.com to secure your data and empower your business. But now, let's get today's guest on. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Boston, Massachusetts, where Michael is waiting to join us. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
My name is Michael Reidy. I am a leadership consultant with a company called Interaction Associates. And my interest in this is fueled by my earlier interest in adult education, depending on your accent, and believing really that the workplace is the place where we now grow and learn, second only to perhaps our family of origin and, of course, our home life. But so third, I suppose, the third place of real learning is work. Living in Cambridge in the US, and I work for, I'm now an owner of this company, so it's a small owner, 21%, but a significant piece of my life is invested in the mission of helping people to work better together.
And you've been on an incredible journey, and someone with extensive experience of consulting with tech companies. And I'm curious, looking back throughout your career, how have you seen the dynamics of multi-generational workforces? Have you seen that impact things like collaboration and innovation within these organizations? Because we hear a lot about the technology, but I think it's the human dynamics that has changed too, which is quite exciting.
Yes, it is. It's quite, in the 25 years I've been doing this work, I have seen almost culture shifts and then culture reversals in terms of the importance that organizations, especially tech organizations, place on processes and simplification. And it seems like there's always a pendulum swing back and forth, trying to avoid over complexifying things and trying at the same time to negotiate a mentality shift that favors the collaborative while never losing sight of the innovative.
Yeah, completely with you. It's incredibly exciting to see. And if we consider the unique complexity of a multi-generational workforce, what that introduces to the workplace, what are some of the most common challenges that you've observed in communication and collaboration across a variety of age groups. And how can organisations effectively address these issues? Because there's good and bad on all sides, but if everyone comes together, it's phenomenal what can be achieved. But what are you seeing here?
I think among the challenges within the multi-generation, of course, are, I suppose people have, in another generation, people thought they got a job for life.
Yeah. And
they thought this was it. I joined the bank and it was set. I became a member of a group of lawyers and I'm set. I joined the tech industry and it's one innovation after the other. But it turns out that there's a significant quote that I live out of is the only constant is change, which I heard first in a financial services company 27 years ago. And I thought it was terribly wise. And then I remembered about 18 months later, some of my philosophy from university in Dublin. A famous thinker called Heraclitus said, you can't step in the same stream twice, which of course means the stream is always moving. The water is never stagnant in a stream. And there's a second thing that's changing, and that's you. The person who's stepping in is always changing. So one of the complexities, I think, is that there's this constant change. And there's a little clash, I think, in the human, where the human would like it to be regular, would like it to be. I don't think the human wants order, and sometimes we mistake stability and sameness for order, whereas in fact there's a beautiful disorder that's necessary to be innovative. So in my experience, there is that clash in those who want everything to stay as it is, and the huge drive that's in the tech industry, of course, to not just to innovate but also to simplify and then to be creative within that context.
Absolutely love that. And just to further bring that to life, are there any examples you can share where maybe you've seen firsthand the distinct strengths of different generations, such as crystallized intelligence from older generations, fluid intelligence from younger ones, being leveraged together to drive innovation and solve problems? It'd be great to hear some positive examples. Is there anything that springs to mind there?
Yes, Neil, there is, I think, some really beautiful examples in AI and the way that the tech industry is adapting to AI. Clearly, the science that AI is built around is not new. It's nearly much of the science of the big AI has been known since 2017, and so what we're witnessing now is, I suppose, the integration of the newest, brightest thinkers emerging and joining to leverage AI with those who have navigated the models, who built there's only 5 families apparently of within the technology of AI. But it's interesting to me that they even use the word family when they approach what is, I think, the greatest game changer currently within the tech industry. And so, in my experience, the strength, you bring out a beautiful point there with crystallized intelligence, which is an intelligence that builds on experience, that understands the patterns of not just my life, but of discovery, and begins to leverage those. And it's contrasted, I think we do well to contrast that with fluid intelligence, which is an intelligence that younger people can sit an exam, pass the exam, and with great ability, based on without actually having experienced what they're speaking about or what they're being tested on. So when you marry the crystallized intelligence to the fluid intelligence, between these, I mean, there's 5 generations, different generations in our workplaces, in our tech companies. at present. I think you have a fusion that is unstoppable in terms of its ability to co-create and to innovate.
Yeah, that's a great point about there being 5 generations there. And of course, feedback mechanisms across all those generations is crucial in any organisational setting. So what strategies have you found that might have proven effective in extending feedback mechanisms across those generations to include insights and perspectives from all age groups within the workplace? Because there's not a one-size-fits-all that will appeal to every generation, is there?
There is not, of course, Neil. And I often think of my own growth. I've been lucky to meet probably 3 managers in my life who shaped me, and most of their shaping was done by encouragement. Was done by a feedback that emphasized or took the trouble to see the development that was happening in me and frame it back to me. So I think there's a tremendous responsibility on the managerial folk within our tech industries to invite the different generations into the game of learning, into the game, into the life journey of growing as humans, but also growing as purpose-driven and as people who are challenged to contribute their gift and invited to contribute their energy and stimulated to stay within the workforce. There's a little bit of mistrust, I think, sometimes that the younger generations are not as committed as we were thinking. This mythical we, of course, is the older folk who very often are in the managerial positions. And if we allow ourselves to live out of our biases, I would say, we're missing a significant possibility of helping a whole generation, the next generation, mature, just as we were helped to mature. I didn't get to where I am today without somebody noticing what I did well, noticing how I might change, and saying it to me in a way that I could hear. So I do think feedback. I once heard a very enlightened speaker at a lunch at the conference board in New York, at a lunchtime talk, say it's foolish to call it feedback. Who wants food back? What it should be called is food forward. And I thought, gosh, it's a small little reframe, but if you begin to think of the gift that you're giving as food, every human body needs food, but we need it for the next piece of our journey. So it's always future focused. It's always for the next moment of this collective journey we're on as a species, really.
It's funny, isn't it, how it always comes back to food. There's another saying about a feedback sandwich, where you've got the positives and the negatives, but they're all put into a nice sandwich kind of action. Yes. There always comes back to food, doesn't it?
It does. Well, I think it's worthy of when we do look for nourishment at work. Yeah, and that's not a new thing. Ever since maybe we decided that we weren't just cogs in an industrial machine complex, that we could build a system where human happiness was possible, and human ambition could be fueled in a work context. I think we've turned on the possibility of it being nurturing, of it being nourishing, and of it being food or life-giving.
And from your viewpoint, what would you say is the specific actions that leaders could take to maybe cultivate a culture where generational differences are not just tolerated, but actually celebrated, and encourage each generation to thrive and contribute to their fullest potential. I know I'm painting a picture of like a workplace utopia, but it is possible, isn't it?
Oh, I think we underestimate the power of leaders in terms of shaping of a culture. There's a rather infamous saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And in other words, the way we do things around here is actually central, which is how I would define culture. And the creation of human relationships, we sometimes say you get results, which is a leading indicator, by how you leverage two other things: processes, which is how we go about getting the results, and relationships. Imagine a triangle, imagine an equilateral triangle. You don't have to have any one thing on the top, but think in terms of leading indicator, think of our lagging indicator. I sometimes ask groups, which is a lagging indicator, results or process or relationship? And they think for a while and they end up saying the lagging indicator. Well, which is a leading indicator? And then they say more readily, process is a leading indicator. I would say relationship also is a leading indicator. In general, results are lagging. They depend on the process. They depend on the relationship. So I think the workplace culture needs an emphasis on from each generation to build relationships back and forth. So giving a certain amount of autonomy, I think, especially to the millennials and the Gen Z, tapping into their creativity and allowing for short and long-term relations commitments is really central, I think. There's an older model which says we have an apprentice model, which dominated, I think, the recruitment process, even in the tech industry. But I think it's no longer appealing. So instead, a culture, I think, that promotes innovation, that says you can grow here personally and there'll be a bit of flexibility for you, will resonate more with all generations. In my experience of late, I think the leaders have the responsibility of cleaning up the processes or inviting a streamlining of the processes. And I think people are hungry for clarity around processes, and that means leveraging people's, I suppose, emotional intelligence and leveraging their social intelligence. In general, those who have stayed in our industry have a third intelligence, which is the theory is that it's called contextual intelligence. That is to say, if you've spent 10 years in the tech industry, in a particular organization, you know how to navigate that particular culture. That's a kind of intelligence that somebody just entering has to take a certain amount of time to acquire. So the blend then of the technical knowledge that gets you the job with the adaptability to and the agility that is required to remain in a position and grow brings about a kind of a synergy that does enhance, I think, efficiency and innovation. So trust, of course, is the key to really building and enriching the context that people work in. And so it brings me to saying that I think there's recognizing differences is a key, and recognizing the gifts or the strengths. We don't want all the same people who went to the same universities as us necessarily. In fact, we want different thinking and, of course, complementary styles. But you couldn't imagine in a soccer team having a successful team if they were all goalkeepers. Yeah. You couldn't imagine in an American football context if they were all forwards. It would not really work, or if they were all offense. So I do think the leadership is offered an extraordinary possibility of bridging the gaps.
And I think you've just unintentionally described why the UK political spectrum's in such a mess right now. We've got nothing but 12 goalkeepers that all went to the same school, you know?
It is an extraordinary challenge to look. I think one of the greatest things that leaders can do is leverage their own, know their own strategic thinking capability, but also hire for different strategic thinking strengths. And that sometimes means looking beyond where I went to school or how I was educated, to include a freshness of perspective.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a little research on you, and I was reading how you've also mentioned the importance of leaders moving from positions to interests, to reconcile differences within that multi-generational workforce. Again, incredibly forward-thinking. But can you elaborate on how that approach, maybe you've seen how it has facilitated more harmonious and productive interactions in your work with different tech companies that you've seen throughout your career?
Yeah, I think like never before, tech companies are expected to work cross-functionally, and while maybe even just 10 years ago you were in services, or you were in R&D, or you were in a particular slice of an organization, but now I think we are being invited in the organizations that to actually work beyond our individual from beyond, cross functionally. And now that means that we are invited to consider what is the thinking that is animating many different segments of the organization. That means I think people enter into most conversations with positions when it comes to tackling an issue, like solving a problem, like opening within the sales function, having the sales be able to talk to the R&D, and there's very often different positions are taken up. Now, what has been found, I think, is people can get positional and stay positional, and they can almost be on top of their own mountain, looking across at each other and waving their thinking flag. If you let it stay at position, very little changes. People are happy in their position, they're happy in their isolation. If you wanted to work cross-functionally, I think the invitation has to be made to find out what is below position, what's driving position. Some people will say, well, it could be values, yes. It could be needs, certainly. It could be worries, yes. And there is a group who say, what's a really good word for what drives position is interests. And if you can have always intergenerationally an interest-based conversation rather than a position-based conversation, I think you're going to change every conversation. And of course, the secret sauce you're looking for is, could we possibly get to a common interest? Just a tiny common interest. Now, out of common interest will come in time, perhaps, small agreements, and that they are the building block of civilization. Believe it or not, this particular way of framing and understanding has been used in my own country, in Ireland, in the north of Ireland, during the peace process by a man called George Mitchell came to the north of Ireland and met, I think he wrote about this, over the course of 2 years in 1996 to 1998, he met 24 different positions that came to speak with him. Not everyone came to speak with him. Towards this time of year, in March, April of 1998, he said, we're going to have a meeting for a week, and we're going to try to get to common interest. And I'm going to stop coming over from North America. I have a new wife, I have a new child, and so they had a meeting for a week, which actually lasted 2 weeks, and then he brokered an agreement which was announced on a Friday, which happened to be the Christian holiday of Good Friday, so it became known as the Belfast Agreement or the Good Friday Agreement. But he brokered a conversation that ended essentially the Troubles. Now, the real miracle happened in 2005 when somebody who had stayed outside of that process, because they said, our position is we do not talk to terrorists. That was a party led by the Reverend Dean Paisley, the Democratic Unionist Party, had stayed outside of this whole process. Meanwhile, Gerry Adams, who led an organisation called Sinn Féin, or the IRA, his party became the biggest vote winner on the nationalist side. In 2005, a miracle happened. The party led by Reverend Dean Paisley and the party led by Gerry Adams went into a power sharing based on a common interest. And when they came to knowing what was the common interest, it wasn't peace, because peace in military context like this sometimes is not attractive to everyone. But what was common was they all had children, and they all had an interest in their children growing up in a context that was not dominated by the gun or the bullet or the bomb. And even to this very day, just recently, in the north of Ireland, the power sharing executive was reconstituted with 2 women, one from the Sinn Féin and one from the Democratic Unionist, becoming the new first time ever leaders, female leaders, in this of a power sharing. So, and now I'm saying what works in politics, what works in government, I think can work. If it can work in Northern Ireland, I think it can work in our tech context as well.
Wow, that is such a powerful story. And if we were to take everything you've just said into the workplace, I know you're an advocate for seeing conflict as sometimes a positive force. So are there any examples in the workplace from your consulting experience where generational conflict within a tech organisation maybe actually led to a breakthrough in innovations or new solutions? Because as you said earlier in our conversation, you don't get fixes and you don't solve anything by everybody thinking the same way. It's that diversity of thought where the magic happens, isn't it?
It is really, Neil. I mean, the examples are many and many. The famous ones, of course, are that the original maker of this phone, Nokia, missed it when it came to touching the screen. They said, a little bit like the Canadian group, who said, you've got to press down the buttons. People will never not like that. And they held on to the BlackBerry people. But not to make a saint out of Steve Jobs, but he had a younger mentality. He had a different generational view of things, which were built around simplifying, making it possible for just the touch of your thumb, just the touch of your finger to transform a phone from being into what it is today, almost the carrier of nearly everything that we want to and hold dearly, from photographs to names to the transmission of innovative data. So I do feel that apparently Steve Jobs was it was a hard man to work for. Not that I ever met him, but I think you're breaking a mold. If you're going to break a mold, they say it's very hard to bake anything without breaking the egg. And at some level, you've got to be prepared to break something in order to create something. And that will bring, to let go of something. It goes back to the change thing. Change is the only constant in our tech world. And we've we need to embrace that again and again and again, and that will bring good conflict.
100% with you. And I'm old enough to remember, I think when those iPhones came out, I think it was Steve Ballmer of Microsoft at the time. He was laughing, couldn't stop laughing at the idea of a phone that you couldn't physically type and make your emails like you could the BlackBerry, and said this will never work. Right. But of course it did quite the opposite, didn't it?
Yes, it transformed our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, for better or worse, but there's an argument for another day.
Do you know where your Sony Walkman is today?
Oh, yes, with the orange pads on the earphones. I remember that well. But
it's in the basement or it's in the attic. Yeah,
it'll be there somewhere. Reminds me of the Cliff Richard video. I like tall speakers. I like small speakers. I always remember that, his roller skating around. But
yes.
But if we look forward, how do you anticipate the dynamics of having 5 generations in the workplace? How do you see that evolving, particularly in the tech industry? And is there any advice that you'd offer to any up-and-coming leaders that could be listening on how they should prepare and ultimately thrive in this increasingly diverse workforce?
Well, I think we are only touching the tail of the gift of the 5 generations.
Yeah.
We're beginning, especially in the light of COVID, to go beyond the biases that are a little infantile, really. We're beginning to understand there's wisdom in the young, there's wisdom in the middle, there's wisdom in the old. So it's leveraging, I think, that crystallized intelligence and leveraging the brilliance, really, of the fluid intelligence, and fusing them and recognizing that the differences are the gift and they are what we can leverage.
They really are. And I think that's a beautiful moment to end our conversation on. But before I let you go, I always ask my guests to leave one final gift, and that is a song that they can add to our Spotify playlist. All I'm going to ask is, what would you like to leave to that list, and why?
Well, the song that comes to my mind as I contemplate the 5 generations and the future is a Bob Dylan song called "Blowing in the Wind." At one level, the song is about inviting people to think beyond war, think beyond conflict, think into peace, but it's also inviting people to hear and listen to each other. And it's saying, if we could do that, we could mend and build a new world. And so it seems to me that is the co-creative moment we're in, where 5 generations are collaborating, which is laboring together. They're co-creating, which is making it up as they go along, and they're cohabitating in the workplace. So it's an extraordinary moment. For the answer as to what it will be is blowing in the wind, and the wind is at our backs, as the Irish blessing says. May the wind continue to be at our backs, and may the road rise before us as we move.
Wow, that is possibly one of the best answers I've had to that question. Cracking song from a brilliant album as well. I think it was the Freewheeling album.
Yes.
Was that famous cover in a street in New York, if I remember rightly, with a girl on his arm. Is that right?
That's right. Susie. I can't remember her second name, but yes, she was the love of his life at the time.
Yeah, powerful. Great album. I urge people to check that out as well. And for anyone listening, wanting to find out more information about Interaction Associates, everything we've discussed today, contact your team. What's the best starting point for everything?
I think go to www.interactionassociates and please, and we'd be delighted to host you on that website. And we would invite you to ask us questions and invite us to have a conversation about the needs that are arising in your organization. We have some experience of helping people shift and change their workplaces by demonstrating the power of collaborative capability and transferring the gift of skills within the collaborative frames mindset.
Well, this is a tech podcast, but every day I always finish by saying technology works best when it brings people together. And I look at your story there and talking about a future of work where there are 5 different generations in the workplace and using technology to bring them all together, accepting that conflict is a catalyst for innovation and leveraging diverse strengths. That is where the magic happens. And multi-generational workforce dynamics is something we could talk about for another couple of hours, but just thank you for shining a light on this crucial topic. I really appreciate your time today. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Neil. Be well, stay well, go well.
So as we conclude today's episode, consider this. How does your organisation manage the blend of generational perspectives? As I said, there's 5 generations in the workplace working side by side right now. So are there any opportunities that you're missing by not fully engaging with every group? This is where I invite you to join the dialogue, share your experiences and thoughts on fostering intergenerational collaboration. What strategies have you seen or implemented that effectively harness these collective strengths of a diverse workforce? Email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, just @NeilC. Let's keep this conversation going and learn from each other. That is what this podcast is all about. And I also invite you to join me again tomorrow. We'll do it all again with a different guest, a different topic from a different sector. Hopefully proving how technology works best when it brings people together. So thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.